This lecture is on the history of Amazon Web Services so far. So before we begin, you're never going to go into an exam and be asked what year was EC2 created or what year was S3 created. This lesson is actually just to give you sort of context of where AWS is and where it's going and why it's so important to learn AWS. So why is AWS so powerful? Well, this is Andy Jassy, and Andy Jassy is the CEO of Amazon Web Services, and he said famously that invention requires two things. One, the ability to try a lot of experiments, and two, not having to live with the collateral damage of failed experiments. Now, I'll give you a perfect example. We at A Cloud Guru are a startup. We did everything serverlessly, and we literally had no budget to build our platform. We had almost no money in the bank whatsoever. And we were able to go and use AWS and build a platform that scales automatically with demand for little to no running costs. And that's the beauty of serverless, and we'll get into what serverless means throughout the rest of this course. But it also, going back before serverless, but with the invention of Amazon Web Services itself, it meant that startups could go and try out new ideas, and then if it didn't work or they provisioned the wrong resources, you could just go in and terminate it. You didn't have to live with the failed damage or the damage of failed experiments. So before AWS and before the cloud, what used to happen is you would go and you'd get a server, and you get it from a provider like Rackspace, for example, and you'd be locked into 3 to 5 year contracts. So if you made a mistake, that was it. You were stuck in a 3-year or 5-year contract, and you couldn't necessarily get out of it. And also, renting servers is actually quite expensive, and even purchasing servers for a startup, if you're purchasing, let's say, 2 web servers, 2 database servers, a switch, some firewalls, and a load balancer, you're probably going to be looking at about $20,000 just to get the equipment. And that can be an awful lot of money for startups. Now, when AWS came along, they started provisioning virtual machines, and you could go in and provision them instantly. You could do it at the click of a button. And you could just run that virtual machine for a couple of minutes and then terminate it, and you would only be billed for that hour in which it ran. So it meant that you could go in and start experimenting and doing lots of different things, and you didn't have to live with the collateral damage of failed experiments. So that is why AWS is so powerful. So let's go on to a brief bit of history about AWS. And in 2003, Chris Pinkman and Benjamin Black presented a paper on what Amazon's own internal infrastructure should look like. And they suggested selling it as a service and prepared a business case. And then AWS first launched SQS, and we'll cover off what that is later on in the course. But SQS was the very first service, and this basically is a queue service or a message service and allows you to decouple your infrastructure. And that was launched in 2004. Then AWS as a business officially launched in 2006, and they were really, really clever with the way they launched, because they basically targeted a lot of Silicon Valley startups. And by 2007, over 180,000 developers were on the platform. So they went after the developers first. They weren't going after the enterprise markets. They went straight for the developers. And all these startups like Dropbox or Airbnb, etc., started on AWS. And because they didn't have to raise huge amounts of money in order to, buy physical servers, they could just use Amazon servers. It made them the massive titans of business that they are today. And by 2010, all of Amazon.com moved over to Amazon Web Services. And by 2012, Amazon had their first reInvent conference. Now, reInvent is held in Las Vegas every year. It's typically just after Thanksgiving. It certainly has been for the last few years. We are there every year. Last year we had a stand. This year we'll probably have a stand as well. And there's also a big party at the end of reInvent called Replay, which is great. It's like the biggest tech party on planet. And at reInvent, what Amazon do is they go out and they release all their big releases for the year. So they'll release all the new services. So that's what reInvent is. In 2013, Amazon released the certifications. So you could start getting certified as a solutions architect, as a developer, as a SysOps administrator, etc. And they started with the associate levels, then they brought out the professional levels, and now they've brought out the specialty levels. And as of recording to date, there are currently 10 certificates that you can get. And by 2014, AWS was committed to achieve 100% renewable energy usage for its global footprint. So Amazon's data centers are mostly powered by renewable energy, or at least they're trying to get that way. I don't know if it's at 100%. I don't know if they hit that target, but they're certainly trying. And by 2015, AWS broke out its revenue, and they were making $6 billion per annum, and it was growing close to 90% year on year. Now that growth has slowed a little bit. I think last time I checked it was about 44%, but that might have been for the last quarter. But it is growing super, super fast. By 2016, they had a run rate of $13 billion, and by 2017, reInvent released a host of artificially intelligent services. So these were services like Polly and Lex, and these are the things that power Alexa. They released SageMaker, which is a type of machine learning, and they released a whole bunch of different AI services. And their run rate was hitting $27 billion for 2017. In 2018, AWS launched machine learning certificates, and they had a heavy focus on automating and AI and ML. So that was all at reInvent in 2018. And then this year, just at the very beginning of the year, they've released the Alexa Specialty Cert. So you can now get Alexa certified as well. And there's a total of 10 certs available right now. So that's the history of AWS so far. We're still waiting on the 2018 run rate numbers, but I would expect them to be much bigger than last year. And it really is a great thing to learn. Amazon Web Services is going to be around for decades, and the demand is just going to keep growing as more and more businesses move their infrastructure to the cloud. And of course, more and more businesses will want AWS certified people. So by doing this course, you're going to get your AWS certification, and you're going to learn an awful lot and hopefully have an awful lot of fun. So that's it for this lecture, guys. If you have any questions, please let me know. If not, feel free to move on to the next lecture. Thank you. Okay, hello Cloud Gurus, and welcome to this lecture. In this lecture, we're going to look at the AWS platform from a 10,000-foot overview. Now, this is a real photo. Most of you may or may not know this, but this is a photo that was taken in February of 2018. This is when Elon Musk sent his Tesla Roadster to Mars. It actually overshot Mars and went to the asteroid belt. And this is a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy reference here. You can see on the screen it says, "Don't panic." So we're going to have a look at AWS. We're going to have a brief look at all the different high-level services and some lower-level services. Don't panic, because there's an awful lot of services, and you do not need to know every single service to pass your exam. I would wager now that there's very few people on the planet who know every single service in a lot of depth, just because there are so many. So please do not panic. So let's go and have a look at the AWS console in 2015. And this is what it looked like. And basically, when I first started recording the A Cloud Guru lectures in 2015, I'd go and I'd talk through every single service. So what EC2 is, what Lambda is, what S3 is. And the reason I did that was because all of these services were relevant, more or less, to the Certified Solutions Architect Associate exam. Let's have a look at what it looks like in 2016. 2016, you can see that we've got more services. So we've got things like machine learning, we've got workmail, we've got a whole bunch of new services that are being added, like Elastic Transcoder, for example. And these services actually weren't all that relevant to the exam, but I'd go through and explain what they were anyway. This is what the console looked like in 2017, so we're getting more and more and more services. And when I started to record my lectures and talk about every single one of these services, the course was getting to be about an hour and a half long just on this section. And a lot of these services are no longer relevant to the Certified Solutions Architect Associate exam. So let's have a look at what the console looks like today. So this is what the console looks like today. Don't worry, in the next lecture we're going to look at how you can sign up to the console using free tier. So if you haven't already signed up, I'll show you how to do that in the next lecture. And if you want to see all the services, you can click up here and go services, and you can group them or you can do them from A to Z. And if we scroll down, there's an awful lot of services. And if I was to go through and explain what each individual service was, let's say for 30 or 40 seconds, the whole course is this whole section of the course is probably going to take 2.5 hours. And I'm just going to be wasting a lot of your time because a lot of these lower level services are just simply not relevant to the Certified Solutions Architect Associate exam. Things like Amazon Connect or Pinpoint or Let's have a look. Media Convert, any of these media services, Deep Lens, for example. None of these are relevant to the Certified Solutions Architect Associate exam. So what I am going to do now is, in this lecture anyway, is I'm just going to go through and just talk about the high-level services. So compute, storage, databases, migration and transfer, etc. And then we're going to look at the platform from that perspective. And then I'm going to show you what is relevant to the AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate exam. One other thing I will show you is up here, you can change what region you're in, and we're going to have a look at what the different regions are in a second, and what the difference is between a region and an availability zone. For the rest of this course, I would recommend that you use the US East Northern Virginia region. The reason for that is this is the oldest region, and this is where all the new services come out first. This is also the region that actually goes down the most as well. So when you're building your production workloads, maybe use US East Ohio or some of the other US West ones, because Northern Virginia does go down, tends to go down once a year. But who knows, maybe that's all in the past. So let's have a look at the AWS high-level services, and we'll start with the global infrastructures. The global infrastructure is what we've just been talking about. It's the regions around the world in which AWS is based. On top of the global infrastructure sits a whole bunch of high-level services. So we've got compute. Examples inside compute might be EC2, might be Lambda, etc. And we are going to cover those off in the course. Storage, we've got things like S3. So this is where you put files into buckets. We've got different services in there, like EFS, for example. Again, we're going to cover it off in the course. Databases, this could be relational databases such as RDS. This could be non-relational databases such as DynamoDB. Migration and transfer is a way of getting things to and from AWS. It includes things like a Snowball, which we are going to cover. Network and content delivery is basically one of the most sort of fundamental parts of AWS. So things like VPCs, virtual private clouds, as well as CloudFront, their CDN. We're going to cover that in the course. Developer tools is not really relevant for the Certified Solutions Architect Associate exam. It is covered, as you might guess, in the Developer Associate exam. Robotics, blockchain, and satellite are all new high-level services that were released at reInvent for 2018. Not covered in the course. I really hope there's a robotics specialty at some point. That would be super cool. But it is a very, very new high-level service, not relevant for the exam. Management and governance we will cover. Media services we won't. Machine learning, so this is all the sort of AI, things like SageMaker, for example. You basically just have to be highly sort of aware of the different AI and ML capabilities for the Certified Solutions Architect Associate exam. They may ask you a question about one or two services, but you don't need to know it in a lot of depth. Where it does come up is in the new machine learning specialty cert, which I did actually just a couple of weeks ago, and it is super, super tough. We've then got analytics, we've got security, identity, and compliance. Security, identity, and compliance we will cover off in the very next section of the course, where we start to log into identity access management. We're going to start creating our users, groups, and roles. We then have mobile, not really relevant. AR and VR, so AR is augmented reality, VR is virtual reality, again, not really relevant. Application integration, as well as AWS cost management. Cost management can be a part of the Solutions Architect Associate exam. It's a big part of the Cloud Practitioner. We then have customer engagement, business applications, desktop streaming, IoT, and game development. So let's go ahead and start with the fundamentals, and let's look at AWS global infrastructure. So what's the difference between a region, an availability zone, and an edge location? So we'll start with the global infrastructure. So there's currently 19 regions and 57 availability zones around the world as of December 2018. And there's going to be 5 more regions and 15 more availability zones for 2019 that are currently announced. Of course, there's going to be more. Don't worry, you're never going to be tested on the number of regions and availability zones, but it is important to understand the differences between them, and also where they are, basically. Where's your local region? So before we look at a region, let's look at this. This is a data center, and some of you may have seen data centers before, some of you may have not. And an availability zone is essentially just a data center. That's what I want you to think of an availability zone as. So an availability zone is a facility somewhere out in the country, or it could be in the city, and inside inside that facility is a whole bunch of computer stuff. So servers, we've got SANs, we've got switches, we've got firewalls, we've got load balancers, we've got storage. Basically anything to do with cloud sits inside our data centers. So a data center is just a building filled with servers, and an availability zone is essentially a data center. Now, an availability zone actually may be several data centers, but if they're really close together, they're going to be counted as one availability zone. So one availability zone could be 2 or 3 data centers that are all within, say, a couple of miles of each other. That way, if there is a flood, it might take out all 3 facilities, so it might take out that availability zone. But then you'll have another availability zone that will be 100 miles away, and if it floods in one area, it's not going to affect the other area. So you're going to have different availability zones in different regions. So what is a region? Well, a region is just simply a geographical area. So each region consists of 2 or more availability zones. So we have the London region, we have the Northern Virginia region, we have the Oregon region, we have Sydney region, Singapore region, we have the Tokyo region, etc., etc. So regions are just distinct geographical areas, and each region will always consist of 2 or more availability zones. An availability zone is simply a data center, and a data center is simply a building that's filled with computer stuff. So pretty simple stuff. So let's have a look at today's regions. We've got North America. North America consists of a whole bunch of different regions. So we've got Northern Virginia, Oregon, US West. We've got the Central region, which is Canada. US West that I'm talking about here is actually just for GovCloud. So GovCloud, you can see there's GovCloud US West and GovCloud US East. This is for government customers only. This is not for private corporations. So do bear that in mind. We then got the US East, which is in Ohio, and we've got US West in Northern California. We then down here have a whole bunch of different edge locations, and you're always going to have more edge locations than you will have regions. You might be thinking, well, what's an edge location? Well, edge locations are endpoints for AWS, which are used for caching content. So typically this consists of CloudFront, which is Amazon's content delivery network, and we're going to have a look at that in the S3 section of the course. But it's a way, let's say you've got a big file and you've got a user who's sitting in Sydney, and the server that they're trying to get the file from is in New York. Basically what happens is that user downloads it from New York. It is then cached inside the Sydney edge location. And then if somebody else from Sydney then tries to download that file, they don't need to get that file from New York. They can actually just get it from this Sydney edge location. And again, I'll cover this off in more detail when we go and do the S3 section of the course. What's important is that you understand that an edge location is not a region. It's actually just a sort of a smaller location that AWS have, and it's used for caching content. And there's always going to be more edge locations than there are regions. Currently, there's over 150 edge locations around the world. Let's have a look at South America. We've got a region in Sao Paulo, and then we've got a whole bunch of different edge locations around Rio de Janeiro and Sao Paulo as well. We then have the EMEA region, so Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So we've got the Irish region, which is one of the oldest regions inside Europe. We've got the London region, we've got the Frankfurt region, and the Paris region. We've got a whole bunch of new regions that are coming in EMEA. So we've got regions in Cape Town, in Sweden, in Italy, that are all coming online as well. And then we have a whole bunch of different edge locations there. In APAC, we've got the Singapore region, the Tokyo region, Osaka region, Sydney region, Seoul region, Mumbai region, Beijing region, and the Ningxi region. And then we've got a whole bunch of different edge locations as well. So what is it you need to know in order to pass your Certified Solutions Architect Associate exam? So we had a look at all these different high-level services. I'm no longer going to go into each individual service and explain, what SageMaker is, or what EC2 is, or what Elastic Transcoder is. We will go and explain the most relevant services throughout the course that will help you pass your exam, but we're not going to cover every single service on the AWS platform, because that would be an entire course all unto itself. So what is it we need to know to pass our Certified Solutions Architect exam? Well, why don't we just start with what we don't need to know? So we don't need to know developer tools, we don't need to know robotics or blockchain or satellites, we don't need to know media services, we don't need to know mobile, we don't need to know AR and VR, application integration. We don't really need to know cost management. We kind of do a little bit. That's a bit of a touchy one, so I've made it fall off. But we will cover cost control on AWS because that is an important part of being a certified solutions architect. We don't need to worry about customer engagement, business applications, and IoT or game development. So these are the high-level services that you should focus on in order to pass your exam. And of these high-level services, there's a bunch of core services. And these are the bread and butter of passing your AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate exam. So we've got security, identity, and compliance, which we're going to do in the very next section of the course. We have compute, we have storage, we have databases, and we have network and content delivery. Compute is mostly just around EC2 and Lambda. Storage is going to be all around S3. Databases is going to be mostly RDS, as well as some DynamoDB and some Redshift as well. And I'll explain, don't worry if all these sound like foreign languages, we are going to learn what they are throughout the course. Network and content delivery is all Route 53, which is Amazon's DNS service, as well as VPCs, which is the way, it's like virtual private cloud. It's basically like a virtual data center where you're going to build everything. And basically, if you know Route 53 and you know VPCs inside out, you stand a very, very good chance of passing this exam. And like I said, security, identity, and compliance is going to be in the very next section. And in particular, you need to know identity access management inside out to have a good chance of passing your exam. So what are my exam tips? So you've learnt an awful lot already. Just understand the difference between a region, an availability zone, and an edge location. A region is a physical location in the world which combines two or more availability zones. And so you have a London region, you have a Sydney region, Singapore region, etc. An availability zone is one or more discrete data centers, each with redundant power, networking, and connectivity housed in separate facilities. And then an edge location is just an endpoint for AWS, which is used for caching content. Typically, this consists of CloudFront, which is Amazon's content delivery network, and we're going to learn about that in the storage section of the course. So that is it for this lecture, guys. If you have any questions, please let me know. If not, feel free to move on to the next lecture, where we're going to sign up to an AWS free tier account. Okay, hello Cloud Gurus and welcome to this lecture. So this is a really quick lecture. This is going to show you how to sign up to the AWS platform. If you've never been to it before, just go to aws.amazon.com. If you have never visited it before, it will say create an AWS account. If you have visited it before, it will say sign in. So go ahead and click up here. Your screen may look different. It depends on what time of year that you're viewing it. Certainly around summits, it will look completely different. I'm filming this just after reInvent 2018. So I'm going to go ahead and click create an AWS account. That will take me to this landing page. If you don't see something like that, if you see something similar to this, so it's asking you to sign in, just click here to create a new AWS account, and that will take you to the same landing page as well. So it says create an AWS account, and I want you to enter your email address in here. This email address is going to be known as your root account login or root account address, and you'll always need access to this email address, so make sure you don't enter in a false email address. In here, you just go ahead and enter your password and then go ahead and confirm it. And then down here in your AWS account name, I want you to enter something that's meaningful to you. So I'm going to call mine Cloud Guru 2019. And once you've done that, go ahead and hit continue. Okay, it's then going to ask you for your contact information. Change your account type from professional over to personal, or just make things easy for you because we're not going to use this as a production account. And then I want you to go ahead and fill in all your details. And once you've done that, click create account and continue. It will then ask you for your payment information. Go ahead and fill in your credit card details and then hit submit. So we now need to confirm our identity. What we need to do is just enter in this captcha code, so BNDFNB. So I'm going to enter that in here. Then I'm going to go ahead and click on Contact Me. That's then going to give me this unique 4-digit number, and Amazon are going to call my phone. And all I need to do now is basically enter that in when Amazon call my phone, and that will then go ahead and confirm my identity. Once you've done that, you should be able to see the following screen. And here we go. So our identity has been verified successfully. Go ahead and hit on continue. We then have our support plans in here. So we've got 3 or 4 different types of support plans. We've got our basic plan, our developer plan, our business plan, and our enterprise level support. I would go ahead and click on Basic. This can be a very popular exam topic, knowing the differences between the 4 different support levels. Essentially, if you ever ask for wanting a technical account manager, you're going to need enterprise level support, and you have to be spending $15,000 a month in order to get enterprise support. So go ahead and click on Basic. That will then load this screen saying, welcome to AWS, and you can personalize your experience. I'm not going to go ahead and do that. I'm just going to go ahead and sign into the console. So click into sign into the console. And there you go. You are now registered with AWS, and you're able to sign into the AWS console. And you will need to be able to sign in to do the rest of this course. So go ahead and sign in, and let's move on to the next lecture. If you have any questions, please let me know. If not, feel free to move on to the next lecture. Thank you.